Welcome to the Kind Leader Podcast, where empathy meets action in the world of leadership. Your host, Gino Degregori, engages with innovators and seasoned professionals from diverse sectors, all demonstrating the power of leading with kindness. And now, your host, Gino Degregori.
Today's guest believes that your 90,000 career hours can be a force for good. If you're seeking to align your work with your values, this episode is for you. Hi, I'm Gino Degregori, and welcome to the Kind Leader Podcast. Our guest today is Georgi Enthoven. Is an international thought leader, trusted advisor, and the author of Work That's Worth It, the ambitious professional's guide for a high-impact, high-reward career. With nearly 3 decades of experience across various industries, Georgie specializes in building professionals to align their careers with their values, creating work that's both fulfilling and impactful. Why does this conversation matter? Georgie's approach to demonstrate how integrating purpose and compensation can transform careers, enhance personal fulfillment, and drive meaningful change. Georgie, welcome. To kick us off, can you share with us a little bit about you and your journey, please?
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me. And it's always exciting to talk about kind leadership and anything of that sort. So to kick off about my journey, well, I'll just start where I am right now. And I am in the most exciting part of my career. I just entered my 50s, and it is really an exciting, invigorating time for me. I have just published my first book in April, and I also have launched a podcast to go with it. And basically what I am really interested in is careers that are meaningful, where you have a significant contribution that you're making to the world, but you're also compensated for that time, rewarded for that time. And so I really do believe we need to use business as a force for good. We have a lot of problems to solve. Government can solve some, not-for-profits can solve some, but for-profit businesses need to be part of the equation. And I am always intrigued and interested to find ways that people can do that without self-sacrificing their own needs. So that's my corner of the world that really gets me excited.
Awesome. Congratulations on all your success, especially writing a book. I'm sure that wasn't easy, and launching your new podcast. So we'll definitely put a link there for people to kind of listen to. But amazing story. So thank you for being part of this conversation. And I'll dive in a little bit more into your book and other thoughts that you have. But before we get into it, my favorite question that I always like asking my guests is, what does being a kind leader mean to you?
Yeah. What's coming to mind when you ask that question is I recently met a young Canadian who was about 25 on a vacation that I was on with my younger son in Nicaragua. And he had just done the Camino Trail and had been walking for 5 months, camping. And I talked to him about my book, and we were talking about, living from your heart. And I said to him that one of my goals is to try get less in my head and spend more time in my heart. And he said, at a 25, very wise, he said, the longest journey you're ever going to take is getting from your head to your heart. And it really gave me chills. It was a really profound and beautiful statement that he made. And I felt like, yes, that is my next journey. How do I get to spend more time in my heart? But I think the kind piece comes from your heart. It's not coming from your head. So it's when you feel aligned and you're working from a place of heart. And so, yeah, I think that is an important part of it. And I'll just say afterwards, I reflected on our conversation, and I thought of the key memories in my life, like the times have really been like distinctly beautiful or magical. There are none of them when I'm in my head. And I think so many of us spend a lot of time intellectualizing or strategizing and not really moving into the body and holding but when you're there, that's when you really can have life-changing experiences.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's a great, impactful conversation you had with that young person there.
Yeah. I mean, he was very wise, and that just shows you, we don't always need our elders. We sometimes need the younger population, which actually is, I adore the Gen Zs. And so I really enjoy working with them. I find them inspiring. I find what they care about inspiring. And so, yes, he was just one of many that I find very wise.
Absolutely. And I love what he said, living essentially living from your heart, but like
The journey.
the journey
Yeah.
from coming from your mind to your heart is the toughest, and I think it's a very challenging in the world that we live in, right? Like if you go back like 300 years, 500 years, even just 100 years ago, right? I mean, the information that we have, right? We're constantly looking at data. We're constantly looking at something, right? Whether it's news, whether it's information, whether it's people are always constantly, to your point, like strategizing and thinking, and they're not really enjoying, or I'm not say enjoying, they're not really experiencing life as it should be, right? Because we're constantly in the future or living in the past, right? One of those two. I would add to the comment that he made is the journey to it, but also the journey includes getting close to the present, as close as possible, or like
100%. Yes.
in the now, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's so important. Yes. You and I were talking right before, and I was telling you that I had seen Jacinda Ardern, who's the ex-Prime Minister of New Zealand, speak last night in San Francisco. And one of the things that really struck me is she had some pretty crucial moments in her leadership experience. And one of the big hot buttons that sort of came across, and one of her advisors said, this moment will define how you're known as a leader. And it was the terrorist bombing in New Zealand. And that was the last thing she cared about, is how she was going to be defined. She needed to be there for a group of people. And I think, like you said, if you are focused on, okay, this is my leadership opportunity, this is my moment, you go into the head and think, okay, so how should I position myself? What should I say? But she was able to just stay in her body and just say, how can I serve? How can I contribute? What is needed? And she could feel it, what was happening. And I think it's just such a different way to be and way to lead.
100%. And I tell people, you live, the intuition, heart, all that is right here. All the answers are inside, right?
Mm-hmm.
So even for some tough questions or challenges that I have, I always kind of take a deep breath, take a deep breath, and then kind of just go within, right? And ask those tough questions. Sometimes, you hear the answer, sometimes you don't, but at least you're in the present and it slows things down.
Yeah.
Right. And allows you to make those decisions from the heart, at least make those tough decisions not as hard, right? Because they shouldn't be. I mean, we're here to enjoy life at the end of the day. That's what I tell people, right? We really need to make sure that we are living our best and enjoying everything that we're doing, right? And it touches onto the 90,000 hour career perspective, right? I think, you highlight that average person spends 90,000 hours working. That's insane. I mean, you really think about it.
I know.
90,000 hours, right?
I'm with you. So I maybe 3 years ago, I read a Harvard Business Review article that said the average career is 90,000 hours. And it wasn't an article about that. It was actually an article maybe about like being happy at work or something. But that number just stood out to me as what a huge opportunity. And I had been in business and then gone to business school, and nobody ever talked about the whole sum of what your career could be. And I just had that moment when I read it that I got out of the forest and saw above the trees and thought, how exciting that you get to have this large amount of time that you're going to get to spend. And what are you going to do? How are you going to spend it? And I also love, we don't know what, the future that is going to be ahead of us, but when you're young and you are going to need to provide for your own livelihood, you can presume you're going to have 90,000 hours ahead of you. Yeah. And we are all rich in hours. We don't know how it's going to work out, but we can, starting off, we have to assume that we are all rich in hours. And so it is an interesting way to think about it differently than most of the people that I have coached and experienced and talked to are looking maybe 1 to 2 jobs ahead of, what is my boss doing and what's their boss doing? And how am I going to get there? Or I don't want that. So where am I going to go next? Right. And we don't really think about the bigger picture of the overall contribution. What will you be remembered for? What will make you proud during that journey? And so, it is a very powerful number.
It is. And before talking to you, I never thought about it like that, right? Going to college, then graduating, starting a family, You don't think about it. I'm going to spend 90,000 hours working. That's a lot. I mean, as an entrepreneur, I probably spend more than that.
Yes,
But,
you probably do. Yes, and a lot of Americans do with a very limited vacation. Yeah.
right. And we're so just kind of grind that we forget to what we just said earlier, right? Let's live in the present. Let's live in a slow down, right? And really appreciate or think about, right? Like, what are we going to do? So if you're getting ready to graduate, or people around this time, since we're having this conversation around the middle of June, there's a lot of graduations in colleges and high schools, right? So what do you say to recent graduates to ensure that these hours are spent meaningful in the future? So
Yeah.
how do you kind of help them out?
Well, I will say I am not a fan of find your purpose and live with your purpose, find your passion. Like I believe there's many on-ramps into a
Mhm.
career. And sometimes I think when we only show our sample size of one of how it worked for us, it can be intimidating and off-putting for especially young people. And one of the things that I talk about in the book is most people, your purpose doesn't land on your lap. Most people have to start being curious about it and discover what it is and build it along the way. And
Right.
I will say, you mentioned something earlier about the answers are inside. I do believe it's inside. Like we are experiencing life, and our unique perspective gives us an advantage to contribute in some way. And when we understand those layers and peel back, where do we actually want to spend our time? Then
Right.
you can start to build your purpose. And in the book, I refer to it as your personal mission, just like a company would have a mission. Like, what is it that
Right.
you want to contribute towards?
Right.
And it just feels a little bit less intimidating. I think sometimes this idea of purpose, when you don't have it, it feels like just too overwhelming to come across and to find. So then that's off putting. So what I would tell people is, this is where I start in the book on a chapter on contribution, but I say, understand sort of what are the key events that have shaped you. So from your micro level, like in the woods, like what are the big things you actually care about? And
Right.
then let's think about what the world actually needs. So what the world or your community, but let's think about sort of the big picture of you're never going to regret time contributing to one of the major problems that we need to solve in the world.
Right.
And then see if there's some overlap there. And at the
Right.
end of the day, if you are starting, what is one word that you can say, I'm going to weave in this one word into my life, into what I do day to day, into what I do, my year goals, whatever it is that you can then start to build from. And eventually it becomes probably more specialized, but it could be something as simple as the environment or
Right.
climate or woman or, whatever it is, connection through food, whatever it is that you feel that you are going to bring to the table to contribute, but start with one word if you don't have a bit more defined purpose.
Right. And that's hard. I mean, you said, I mean, and finding my purpose, I didn't actually did find mine until I would say in my 40. Like right at and I don't want to age myself, but right at COVID, right? I turned 40 in COVID, and I was like really thinking and pondering about a lot of things. And prior to that, 3 years prior to that, there was a kind of couple of things that happened to me, like personal, not like physically, but around me, that also allowed me to really think, like, what am I supposed to be doing here, right? But I love what you said, like purpose, don't force it, right? It'll come to you. It'll come, and then like use that mission, that one word. If you're starting off, just getting ready to graduate, start the workforce, just define that. But this also is relevant, I would say, to any maybe career changers that may be looking for something more meaningful in their life, something more impactful, right? Because I understand the job is a job sometimes, right? You gotta work to pay the bills and do other things. But at the end of the day, we live once, right? So why not find something that you're passionate about that makes you feel good and is also potentially impacting others, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I really do believe humans are good and that we are happier when we are contributing. And
Mhm.
so, I mean, part of it is like, what is the intrinsic motivation you have? Like, where is it that it's not sort of an outside effort that you feel guilt that you have to, but like what actually lights you up and gets you excited? And it can be from wherever you are. You talked about people in middle management, like maybe wanting to feel more connected to what they're
Mhm.
doing and the community they're working with. And I will say, during my research for my book, I interviewed a lot of people, and there are lots of examples where people are able to bring in their contribution to into the work environment that they're already in that is not necessarily known for a particular contribution. But I mean, I'll give you an example, which I really love. It's a little bit old school, but I think most of your listeners will probably relate. But back in the day, we used to use catalogs to shop. So versus, shopping on the internet. And I interviewed one of the first employees from Patagonia and asked him for an example of how an employee in the organization is able to take initiative to contribute something that's important to them. And he gave this example of a woman who was handling the catalog business, like the operations behind it. And she had suggested, why don't we use recycled paper? And still today, Patagonia is really part of their story is the photographs and images that they use to transport you into their world of wilderness and love of the outdoors. So the quality of the photographs is really important. So they said to her, as long as you can find paper that can still keep the quality of what we want to represent, then yes. And guess what happened? Not only did she find the paper quality that they were able to do it within the budget and everything else, but it changed the whole industry. Right. So it wasn't just what she changed at Patagonia, but all of a sudden, all catalogs are printed on recycled paper. And so I love that story because sometimes we do feel powerless at work. And you'll be surprised how easy it is to add in a contribution to the work you're doing in some form, especially like now where the job market can be a little bit crazy. And maybe, I mean, it's certainly in some sectors, it feels like everything's frozen. So, if you're not in a job that you feel like you're making a positive contribution, what can you contribute right where you are? And I will usually find that most people are open to people adding value and contributing positively to a community. So you're not stuck. You can add it to where you are. And I love that story because it really does show, take the initiative and you actually never know where it's going to go. Like, I don't think she set out to influence a whole industry, but she made it so easy and cleared the pathway that it made it possible to be a fast move. And obviously for a company like Patagonia, it wasn't their competitive advantage to have a recycled catalog. It was part of their value system. And if more companies can have that value system and share it, the better.
Yeah, and because you never know who may have some ideas, right? So don't ever kind of limit yourself. And I think it's that sometimes it's that fear, or like we talked about in the past in other episodes, where if you have an environment where it's not conducive to or welcome, like your opinions, right? Or you're afraid you may say something that you might get fired, and they don't have that ecosystem or environment where you can be free, right? And speak and provide some ideas respectfully, right? If you're not in that environment, definitely look for some other environments. But if you are in an environment that you never know what you can say that is going to impact so many lives in the future. So that was an amazing story, and I appreciate that. To share a little bit on what we do here within Bravo, I always think anybody has a voice, right? If you have an idea, bring them, right? And we have different kind of areas where they can, bring up those ideas, whether through the managers or through our SharePoint environments that we have, where people provide ideas and that kind of stuff, right? And we do listen because, like you said, you never know what kind of ideas you're going to get that could impact so many other people's lives and how we can change, right?
Yeah.
So I like that. And I think coming back to thinking about your future or thinking about the impact that you want to put in this world with your efforts, it's very important to understand that not only that one word or that one thing, but it's also understanding how you can follow your passion at the end of the day. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to find that word. That passion, I think, is very important. Wouldn't you agree? Like being passionate about.
Yeah. I mean, so I do talk about passion in the book, and I think sometimes passion can be confusing. So, I see like all sorts of different celebrities talk about passion different ways. So Oprah will say, follow your passion. And then someone like Scott Galloway will say, do not follow passion. Find something that actually can pay your bills. And so I tell you what I think. It's one on-ramp. And I think sometimes your passion is a hobby that is going to be really hard to monetize. And sometimes it might even kill your passion and you don't want to do it anymore. So I have a chapter that I talk about passion included in it. And I have some questions to work through to figure out if you're able to bring it to the table. What I will say, which I think is probably what you are referring to is there something you can get into flow state where you just are working and excited to be doing what you're doing? And I definitely have experienced that now later in my career. And I'm not saying that you enjoy all the work. Like, I do not enjoy editing a book. It is so much work, but I'm so excited to get the message out. And I'm so excited to be able to share part of my journey and part of my story with others, that getting a lot of work, like the drudgery, getting that done, also becomes flow state. And I don't know how to explain it any better than you completely lose track of time. And I have 3 children, but my youngest one would come back from school and be like, Mom, have you gone to exercise today? Because he knows that I live in San Francisco and I get to go walk in the woods every day. And it's one of my favorite moments of the day. And there's days he would come home and I would just say, I don't know. And I've been so wrapped up in what I'm doing that I don't even know if I've left the station. But it is quite extraordinary to experience, and it definitely taps into your creativity. And I think to get to creativity, you have to feel aligned with what you're doing. And so I think sometimes passion can also be like one of those words like purpose that feels too intimidating or turns you off and feel like, my passion is collecting something and how can I turn that into, well, you could, but it's not necessarily the only option for you to be in flow state. And I'll tell you, like, I also talk about perspectives and what lived experiences you have, and are any of those something that you can contribute towards? And I'll give you an example where I wouldn't want to. So I'm very sensitive to mold, and I know a lot about it because I've had to live through a lot of decisions around mold. And I don't want to spend any more time of my life thinking about it than I have to, even though I could probably help people understand and get faster to the point where they can get healthy from mold, but it's not something that I want to spend time on. So I think sort of understanding what these topics are, where you can contribute, and then really getting to the bottom of, do you want to spend your 90,000 hours on this? And that will help you make your decision. At least 10,000. Could you spend 10,000 hours on a particular topic? And so it is something that energizes and ignites you versus something where you're self-sacrificing and giving.
Yeah. No, absolutely. That's great. Great story there, an example for sure. And one of the things that I'm trying to understand also, like, from your book and what we're talking about here as it relates to kind of the balancing the income versus impact, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do you go about doing that? Like, because
yeah, I love that you asked the question, and I particularly loved how you asked it because you said versus, and that is really how I was presented the option of income or impact back when I graduated from college. It was the same when I graduated from business school. And guess what? I'm on campuses now, and it's the same choice that people are getting on campuses today. And it's, would you like to work for a not-for-profit, or would you like to work for a bank, consulting, big tech? And they're presented those options. And there's a whole bunch of reasons why, which I won't get into today. But I have found so many people who are doing both. And that was sort of my original quest of like, we've got to be able to find options where people are not self-sacrificing. Because when I first started writing my book, I thought, oh, great. So you've got these 90,000 hours and let's go figure out how to do good with these 90,000 hours. But guess what? People are not going to give up income, especially ambitious people who are able to get into C-suites and boardrooms. They're not going to give up income. And maybe they'll give up some, but they're not going to give up a significant amount of income. So I personally became really interested on what are the opportunities where you don't have to give up income. And that is sort of the place that I find most exciting. And I do think, well, I will tell you, one of the exciting parts about this journey that I've been on is these people are not hard to find. So because we're never presented this and we're given the versus or the or of income or impact, we don't connect the dots. But once I started researching these kinds of people, I find them all the time. Like, it's not hard for me to get podcast guests who are doing this. So people like you who are building purpose and impact into the day-to-day work that you do so that you can get out of bed easier and enjoy your life. And then it's as much time as we're sleeping. So you may as well feel excited about it. And I do believe we're wired to do that. But self-sacrificing is not the answer. And so when I was doing research, I really did find sort of these different characters of we could be at work, and I've touched on all of them. But the ideal is the disruptor for good, where you are in a career that's good for you and good for the world. But oftentimes we're not in that. Like that's because it does take intention to get there. And these are the people who they're able to combine the both. But there's two types of people I've seen a lot in coaching is either the uninspired achiever, so somebody who is in the consulting, banking, big tech, or the machine, I would say, and they have gotten on it and surpassed many others to get these opportunities, and they're on this treadmill, climbing this ladder, and it's not necessarily their ladder. And often, like a lot of the people I went to business school feel this way, and they say things like, "I don't even like what I do. Even I hate what I do. And the worst is I'm embarrassed about what I do, but it's paying the bills. And now my lifestyle is really expensive. And I've got houses and kids in private school and all this, and I can't get off the ladder now." And so those people end up with a lot of regret or just deep dissatisfaction of how they're using their time, but they feel trapped. And then there's another group of people, what I call the unrewarded do-gooder, which would be the flip of that. And they're very focused on impact. And so much so that they are burning out and sacrificing who they are and their life for the contribution they want to make. And it's not sustainable. When you think of 90,000 hours, I want especially want those kind-hearted, generous people to get into C-suites and boardrooms. And so how do we do that? They need to have a longer-term view. And that means they need to be able to receive for their work. And so often it's an internal shift where this person is in their own way of not allowing them to earn more. So it comes across in things like statements such as, "If I don't work for a not-for-profit, I am selling out."
Right.
And not that all not-for-profits are self-sacrificing. We actually have a lot now that have an income-based model, a revenue model. So they can pay employees well. And even just having when you are very aligned with what you're doing, the compensation changes for you. And so part of compensation is income, but it's way broader than income. And so it doesn't only mean that you're earning more, but it's like you are fueled and have energy coming in to do the work you need to do. And that's the part that I'm really interested in.
And then that's beautiful. And I wrote down some notes here that I want to kind of pull a couple threads on. So you mentioned about, people go into get some income and earn money, right? But one of the things that I like telling people, whether I'm interviewing somebody or giving advice, the first thing I say, don't chase money. Chasing money, I feel like, and I've read this somewhere, I can't remember who can I give credit to, but chasing money is like chasing the horizon. You're never going to, you feel like you're running, you're just going to run in around you're never going to get there, right? And it's and even people see that, oh, when I get this dollar value, I'm going to be happy. You can be happy right now. You can make an impact right now in one way or another, right? So it's like I'm just trying to connect the dots there as it relates to you're the creator of your life, right? You're the creator of what you're experiencing right now. You're living in this world based on your perspective on you, right, or myself and others. So I want to make sure that that's clear, that you can create the life that you want as it relates to, especially when it comes to impact. Going back to what I was telling you about COVID and experiencing this experience of deeper, I started meditating, basically what I started doing, and started listening to more things that were supposed to be kind of like, what's my impact? What's my purpose, essentially, right? Why can't I contribute and provide great value to my customers? At the same time, why can't I create an environment where I can build amazing people that are doing amazing things and elevating and rising together, at the same time bringing value to our customers? I was asking myself those questions. Why, the profitability, there's to a point where you make money and then, the additional money is like you can buy more things, you can have more comfort, right? But there's a point in life, right, where money's not going to give you everything that you need. And obviously, like I said, you need it, right, to pay bills, to get the things that you need, but it's not everything, really. If you really think about what you should be focusing on as you're looking into your career or want to make that impact, it's like, what is that one word? Like, what is that one thing I want to create? And for me was creating the kindness came to me, right? Can I bring kindness into a business world? That was the question that I was asking myself, or kept asking myself. Can I bring that and not be seen as a weak individual, a weak leader that is just a nice person? But no, it's more than that, right? It's more about creating that environment, creating that platform where people can be their authentic selves and become the better versions of themselves so they can rise, they can do more things. And that is the vision that I saw, and that's the things that I'm doing, right? And I think creating that impact. And it was the one word, kind. Kind came to me. It's like, just as a kind, okay, well, my wife always talks about that. Maybe I'll definitely give her credit because she emphasized that with our kids. There's one thing that I want you to be in life is being kind, right? Be kind to others, right? So I was like, why can I bring that same concept into the business world? And that's what I've been doing for the last 5-10 years.
I love that for many reasons. But first, everybody in your company can get behind that. So if they can't, that's the wrong place. So it's a filter for who works with you, whether it's your partners or your employees. So one of the key pieces about having a company mission or a personal mission is it easily repeatable? Can other people, could your grandmother explain what's important to you? And so sometimes a one word is really powerful. Like it's all you need is to set the tone for how are you going to work. And I also love, and I've experienced this myself too, is you're talking about chasing money, but I think chasing something you're curious about is a way more interesting way to live, like the adventure of what am I really curious about? And you are curious about, can I bring kindness into the workforce, and can that be used as a leverage for success? Because then it's a win-win, right? It's not I use kindness and then I don't ask for, I'm not kind to customers and like have them pay less. It's the experience will be memorable. And, I think especially as we have AI coming down the tracks really fast, is I've experienced in the last few years, organizations that I'm working with, that often we're so programmed now to be efficient that I will notice people as just sending emails to get through stages of a workflow and not connecting. And especially for me, writing a book, so much of writing a book is actually an emotional and vulnerable journey. It's not about the to-dos I need to check, like getting the right editing and getting the right cover. It's somebody saying, oh my God, you've got to this point. It's actually going to get out into the real world. How is that sitting with you? And just acknowledging the human aspect of what we're going through. And if a company is not able to engage on that human level right now, or a particular person in a role is not able to engage on that human level, the robots are going to do your job way better than you.
Oh, yeah.
And so, this is the wake up call to figure out how to bring part of that heart into the conversation, where there's always an understory of what's happening. There's always a parallel universe that is, if you didn't sleep last night because your kids were sick and whatever it is. And it's relating and connecting those stories makes the conversation and the relationship meaningful. Yeah. And without that, it's going to be very difficult to hold on to your job and build a company without that. So I love that you've brought that in. So that it actually gives you a ton of security in what you do, because it's such a unique experience. Yeah.
Yeah, to your point, we kind of filter people in and out based on that, right? Do they believe it? Do they experience it? But real quick, what you said something, or got me thinking about AI. When you mention AI and our thoughts, it's like AI is the head, right? Because everything is just information, right?
Yes.
So people live it when we're living in our heads or thinking like we don't really feel and enjoy life, and it's our heart, right? And AI will never have, as far as I know, will have a heart, right? Where we can be intuitive and can kind of just the feelings and all that stuff. And that's what makes us human. That's what makes us unique. And that's what I'm trying to do as well, is that we can lead with empathy, right? We can lead with kind, with our heart, intuition, and make people feel, and wrapping it up with more of the experience, right? Yeah. What is the journey for our customers as they experience our consultants, our people, right? Working with them. What is the experience and the journey of our employees as they navigate when the minute they come in and the minute they transition into being an alumni, right? Because we'll still treat them the same way and they can come back anytime. So experience to me is very powerful, and that being able to get behind the kindness of it, like kind leader, is what it's been building for the last 5 years for me, really. And it's good to hear that from your perspective, that is having an impact and driving that. It's that using that one word can create so much, right?
And something else important about what you're doing is I have 2 boys, and there's so much in the information world about how boys are being underserved in the United States anyway, but probably worldwide, and that they are falling behind. And I have noticed with my boys is they actually are really connected to their friends and emotionally connected in a way that I never saw the boys of my generation at that age. And they support each other. They know what each other are going through. So there are boys who are suffering, but there's also this whole group of young men that have been parented with a lot of love and care, and they need role models.
Yeah.
And so, I don't imagine you've ever set out to be a role model of such, but to show up in the workforce in a kind way is different than being in the workforce chasing goals for your ego.
Yeah. Exactly.
And so I'm excited that you are also paving a path for young men to see what leadership could be like if it was not the sort of toxic masculinity aspect, and you can still be successful. And when you're saying kind, I noticed earlier you did use the word nice, but the kind is what you settled on. And I have seen people sort of peel apart those 2 words and saying kind is not nice.
Right.
Kind, you sometimes have to be tough. Kind, you sometimes have to say no because it is the kind thing to do because it's not the right fit or whatever. But it doesn't mean that you roll over and, are amenable to any situation. Yeah. It's knowing really who you are and how you can serve, and then being able to say no when it's not aligned. And so it's not, I have a chapter in my book on conflict, and a lot of the people who I think are the people who really are able to do a huge amount of good in the world during their career, conflict is really hard for them. They feel the other person. It's really hard. We're not taught in school. And so that is a really important part. Being kind is know how to have kind conflict.
Yeah, 100%. And feeling the emotion too. Sometimes people are just prickle. I don't want to feel that, right? I'm like, that's not from a masculine perspective too. We've seen that in the past, or even on the female, on the some don't want to experience that as well, and they kind of shy away from it, right? But we can definitely dive right in. We do need to start wrapping it up. I do want to see if you had a question for me as flipping the mic section that we have here for me.
Yeah. Well, I would love to know, you have children.
Yep.
How has your kind leadership impacted them?
That's interesting. I think I don't want to say I'm different at home. I am, I'm still I do have a little bit of the discipline that I have to put in there. And I would say my wife is, from the both of us, she's more kind in taking care of the kids always. So am I too, but from a different perspective, right? So there's a duality where the female and male kind of energy in the home is definitely thriving. So the way I'm kind to them and the way they know I'm here is that they know that I'm supportive in anything that they choose to do.
Yeah, that's
I don't have any decision or I'm not going to say, hey, you need to do this, or I don't push them to do that, right? And it's more like, you can do whatever it is that you want in life, and know that both mom and I are here for you in any direction that you choose to go.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day is if you want to follow your heart and follow that impact or do those things, do it. But you also need to make sure that you are taking care of yourself and your family in the future as well, right? So we will be there for you to support, but also for guidance and direction.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Thank you. No, great question. I got 3 kids, 20-year-old, almost 20, 17, and 12 years old.
We've got very similar.
And it's funny, they're all different. Grew up in the same household, same parents, and they're all different creatures, right? Different things, different passion, different things that they want to do. but it's amazing. But thank you. So I'm going to go into the rapid fire questions here that I have. So one book every leader should read.
Getting to Yes.
Get into Yes. Okay, I've heard that one. It's a good one,
Yeah.
for sure. Favorite quote or mantra?
The grass is greener where you water it.
The grass is greener where you water it. I like that. That's almost like, it got me thinking of where focus goes, energy flows.
Yeah, 100%.
You've heard that one before, right? That's one of my favorites as well. So if you could have coffee with anyone in the past or the present, who would it be and why?
Yeah, I lately have had a real interest in David Attenborough, who does the documentaries, and he just has a new movie out. He's 99. And when I think of somebody who has had a significant contribution with their career, he really has been so clear of how he spends his time, and he is using all his gifts. And I think he's so charming and wonderful. And I would really like to have a coffee with him.
That's amazing. No, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. All right. So where can our listeners find you out in the social media world?
Yeah. Well, Instagram is where I'm on most consistently, and it's at Georgi Enthoven. And you will have a link, I'm sure, in the show notes, because that can be hard to spell. And I also have a website, georgienthoven.com. And I also have the URL of Work That's Worth It, which is the name of my book and podcast. And so you can find me in any of those locations. And yeah, I really do like to engage with people and understand. I light up and get excited when I know what people's personal mission is or what's the one word they're really following. So happy for anyone to share that with me and DM me. And yeah, work can be a really exciting journey. And I hope that people are able to find the pathways that get them excited.
Absolutely. Beautiful. Well said there. And what's the final message you would like to leave with our audience here?
Yeah. I would say, whatever you're doing for work, make sure you understand what is the problem that you are solving, and is it worth your precious time?
Very nice. What is the problem you're solving, and is it worth your time? Right.
Yeah.
I like that. That's beautiful. Well said there, Georgie. And I really enjoyed this conversation. There's a lot of great content in here, from really creating that one word for your career eventually, right? As well as creating that experience for people, right? And how, because the impact that you create, it's gonna help others in the future, right? And also don't chase the money, don't chase that, right? Chase that, what we talked about, right? Chase the direction or the passion, right? In that one word. So it's been an amazing conversation. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for sharing that your journey and the wisdom with us, and to our audience. Thank you for listening to the Kind Leader Podcast. And remember, be kind, bring value, rise together. Have an amazing day, everybody.